Hello, Serge here from the Backyard Driving Range. Oh, we have a question that came into customer service, and this comes from David Nahar, and David is from the southern coast of Spain. And David says, I have a question that may have been answered many times, but I don't remember seeing the questions or the answer. Does DL, I think he means DJ, my son DJ, use the peak performance golf swing? Okay, David, I guess we could really say in some cases that's a good question because of the fact that over the years we've had many questions come in that have referred to DJ's swing as having some flaws as concerned doing really quality peak performance setup and swing, and that's been true. Now let me explain why sometimes this stuff happens. Over the years that I've worked with a lot of good players, myself included, that we players tend to get careless or just lackadaisical about fundamentals. We talk about fundamentals, right? And the first basic fundamental for the peak performance golf swing is the setup determines the motion, all right? And then so how your body moves is determined by the position in which you place the muscles to move the body so that the proper muscles move. And then even once you're in a perfect setup, doesn't guarantee you're going to make a good swing, or because of the fact that you can start making from a perfect setup bad swing moves, like taking the club away wrong, taking the thing with the club face shut, or turning too much, getting too long in the backswing, turning too much in the backswing, getting a sacred burial ground, finishing over a little bit deep. Why am I mentioning those things? Because those are some of the issues that DJ's had, and a lot of my other students. So I think one of the things that I've seen over the years is that all of you who found this swing know first and foremost it's body friendly, and it's got less moving parts, it's less complicated, and conversely, because it has less moving parts and less things to do, and our number one goal is our rule number one, golf's a game of angles, the fewer the better. We're trying to maintain our angles that we get in with our good setup, basically the wide knees, the outward pressure, always maintain our spine angle, because we've shown that if you move your knee about more than an inch and a half, it's going to what? Start pulling your hip down. Once your left hip goes down, it changes your right hip, which changes your spine, changes your shoulders, it changes your head position. It's a whole concept of the whole system just starts collapsing. Conversely, if you start making an incorrect move, it'll start to pull the body off position. And again, in most cases, making too big a turn, we know at some point, as long as your back hip stays leg stays attached to your back hip, you turn your hips too much and your shoulders too much, that'll make your legs straighten. And for the most part, and once the leg straightens again, we're in the same option. This could be the same thing from having too much forward knee action. So the whole key is that once you start trying to master this setup and swing, little issues can start to creep in, little subtleties where you're just moving your knee just a little bit too much or a little bit too fast, and or you're not really paying attention to other things like your alignment and so on and so forth. But what still happens is because you're still in many cases using much less movement than you ever had before, maintaining your angle so much better. Now instead of major angle changes, you got minor angle changes. Or I might even consider that there's less angle changes, or fewer of them, however term you want to use. But the point is you're making still a much better swing than you had in the past. So conversely, when we have fewer angles changing and fewer mistakes being made, what do we have? We still have a probability of hitting much better misses, all right? And if you've heard me say a million times, golf's a game of misses. He who misses best. And so I think what happens with peak performance players is even when we got a few things out of whack, we'll still hit a fair amount to a good amount of really quality shots, but our misses are so much better. So therefore, we're not as apt to really stay firmly focused on the fundamentals. How about that for a bunch of F's? Firmly focused on the fundamentals of both the setup and the swing. So it's really easy to get lackadaisical, careless, haphazard, and just get up there and walk in and kind of feel good and just smack it. And so the one thing I've always been very hard on with DJ is his setup. Now, the other thing I want to make clear about the peak performance golf setup and swing is that, remember, we have parameters that are acceptable in your swing, in your setup and your swing. Because although we're basically made somewhat similar, we do have different, what I like to call, body situations, different body sizes, more suppleness, more flexibility, more strength than other folks. Some of us have vision problems. Some of us have muscle problems. We can't move our arms the same. And we've had surgeries where we got what I like to call sometimes liabilities that can affect our setup and our swing. So therefore, there's certain good parameters that we want in terms of the setup and the takeaway and being vertical at the top and the transition and swinging to the tee finish and all those things. But they're parameters. And so the key is that you need to take the overall concepts and work within and try to get as close as you can. In other words, we've asked the question many times, is there a perfect swing in the world as God created it? And most people say no. Yes, there is. The perfect swing is a Ferris wheel. It's on, square and solid forever. On, square and solid. All right? And what is a Ferris wheel? It's up and down, 90 degrees to the ground. And how did God design our body to swing up and down? But some of us can't raise our arms as well as others. And some of us have these other liabilities. Can't get into the 30-degree posture. You might have knee problems, ankle problems, where you might need to do what? Maybe narrow your stance more or flare your feet more so you can have better stability. And especially if you got forward leg issues like knees and ankles that are really bad, you might need to flare it more to get there. So the point is that DJ has to get the setup he wants and hit the ball flight he wants, has slight adjustments in his setup from the definitely straight line, walk down a center line norm. Just like I do. I have the ability to open my feet past 180 degrees. I need more flare in my feet, especially my forward foot. All right? But I've had even people pigeon-toed, we flare them out and they start making a better limited turn. Okay? So the thing that's important in terms of DJ's differences is that he's adjusted some of those. Now, when they get out of hand, that's when I jump in and say, up, too far, too much, let's get back to basics. And again, he struggles with the fact that it's overall so simple and so good, he gets careless. He makes, one of his big things, you've heard me say it many times, he makes real sloppy, terrible backswings, practice swings. All right? I say perfect practice makes perfect. If you don't want to get into a really good setup, a reasonably good setup, and make the swing you are trying to hit on the next shot, and make it as good as you can, because as you've heard me say, what's a practice swing? I want you to feel the swing, that's it, then set up and swing the feel. So how can you swing the feel that you want to hit if you make an improper backswing? So that's where I think some of DJ's problems have come in, and that's where I'm always on him to keep staying to fundamentals, setup on fundamentals and the swing fundamentals, and to make sure that it's a never-ending battle to make sure that you get into these correct fundamentals of your setup, so then you can make a correct fundamentally swing, but you still have to think very, very intensely about it. And I know most of you have picked up the fact that he swings pretty much parallel with his driver, and he's been doing that for a few years. And I'm going to hopefully predict here that I've been working hard with him. I've sort of, really dropped the hammer on him and said, DJ, you got to get back to good fundamentals, and I'm not going to let you veer from it. No more, goofing around, no more carelessness, recklessness, and whatever. We're getting you back to good, solid fundamentals. And I said, the number one thing I want in your setup is to make sure that you work on getting into it correctly every time and getting the proper positions. And the biggest thing I'm working on in this setup is his alignment. His alignment has been farther to the right. He's kind of, whatever term you want to use, ignored me or didn't believe me or whatever. And finally, near the end of last year at Sea Island, which he had a great tournament, finished fourth, I finally convinced him on the range that day about making sure that he had to be parallel left, and got him to a point where every time he hit a shot and he was aimed out to the right, and even if it went to where it was supposed to go, I'd say, drop the club on the ground by your toes, come back and check it out. And it's like, holy cow, it's still way out there. And I told him, DJ, realistically, for the last 2 or 3 years, most of the shots you hit in the fairway, they've been 20 and 30-yard pulls. And that's why you leave a lot of blocks to the right, and that's why you have over pulls now and then. So we work on those things, and I'm going to stay on him for that. And I told him without a doubt the number one thing I want, overall his iron game is pretty good, but yet he was still having another issue we found near the end of the year was really looking at close to his swing, he was turning too much. He had too much hip turn, too much shoulder turn. He was deep in the sacred barrel ground. Was actually his first move was a little bit out over the top to come to the ball. So we really worked hard, and so far from that Sea Island tournament on to just when I worked with him last week before he heads out on tour this year, he's pretty much staying over his toe line at the top of the backswing. But I said, I want that backswing with the driver 3/4. I will settle for nothing less, and I'll be on you like a pimple on your nose until you get this right. And I said, I am not letting up on that one. I said, if I have to bring out the whips and the chains and tie you up on the lesson tee until you get it, you're going to do it. And so I think you're going to see, hopefully, that, hopefully, he better get his 3/4 swing down. So hopefully you can see the range here. Body-friendly swing, parameters. It's up to you to take the basics of the setup and swing and try to do them as close as you can to the exact basics and see where you maybe have to veer a little out one way or the other and find the best setup and swing that works the most consistently for you to hit the ball relatively solid and straight so you can shoot those lower scores. Okay? There's no exact, absolute. We allow variation in the parameters. You have to find what works best for you within good parameters of the peak performance setup and swing. And that's when you'll really start to see the results that the peak performance swing will give you so that you can play better golf. That's it for the search for today, and I'll be talking to you all again soon.